Science shows that decisions made in moments of anger are far more likely to be wrong than decisions made in a calm state of mind. When anger takes control, our brain shifts from careful reasoning to emotional reaction. Instead of thinking clearly, we react quickly and often regret those reactions later. That is why the philosopher Aristotle once said, "Anyone can become angry, but to be angry at the right time, for the right reason, and in the right amount, that is true skill." But the real question is, have we truly mastered that skill? In our daily lives, we rarely stop to think about the consequences of anger. A single moment of uncontrolled emotion can damage relationships that took years to build. One careless decision made in frustration can completely change the direction of a person's life. Today's story teaches us an important lesson about emotional control and true strength. Having power, wealth, or authority does not automatically make someone strong. Real strength lies in the ability to control one's emotions. Long ago, there lived a powerful king who ruled a large and prosperous kingdom. He was known for his intelligence and sharp mind. However, despite his wisdom, he had a serious weakness. He lost his temper very easily. Even small mistakes made by others could make him furious. When he became angry, he often made quick decisions without thinking carefully. Because of this, many people in his kingdom received harsh punishments for very small errors. The king believed that strictness showed strength, but in reality, his anger created fear among his people. One day, the king received unexpected news. His childhood teacher had arrived in the kingdom after many years. This teacher had once guided the king when he was young. He had not only taught him reading and writing, but also important lessons about life, patience, and wisdom. The king felt happy and honored to welcome his old teacher. He invited him to the royal palace for dinner that very evening. As they sat together, they began talking about old memories from the king's childhood. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed their meal. Everything seemed peaceful. Then, suddenly, something small happened that changed the mood. A fly accidentally fell into the king's bowl of soup. The moment the king saw it, his face turned red with anger. He slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "What is this? A fly in my soup? How could someone be so careless?" The servant who had served the meal immediately became terrified. His hands began to shake as he replied nervously, "Your Majesty, I assure you the soup was clean when it was served." But the king was too angry to listen. His temper had already taken control. At that moment, the old teacher quietly observed the situation. With a calm voice, he spoke gently. "Your Majesty, please think about this carefully. The servant did not place the fly there. It most likely fell into the bowl afterward." The king replied impatiently, "Teacher, you don't understand. Even small things like this completely ruin my mood." The teacher smiled kindly and said something that surprised everyone at the table. "Your Majesty, the fly did not ruin your peace. Your reaction did. A person who cannot control his own emotions cannot truly control anything else." For a moment, the room became silent. The king had never thought about anger in this way before. Seeing that the king was listening, the teacher continued, "Strong emotions, whether anger or excitement, can cloud judgment. When we make decisions during these moments, we often make mistakes. Before reacting, give yourself a little time. Take a breath. Think clearly. Do not allow emotions to command you. Instead, learn to guide them. The king lowered his voice and said quietly, "I have tried many times to control my anger, but I still fail." The teacher nodded with understanding. That is because emotional control requires practice. Patience is not something that appears overnight. Just like building physical strength requires exercise, controlling emotions also requires consistent effort. These words stayed in the king's mind long after the dinner ended. In the days that followed, he began trying something new. Whenever he felt anger rising, he paused before speaking. Instead of reacting immediately, he allowed himself a moment to think. Slowly, he noticed a change. When his mind was calm, his thoughts became clearer. When his thoughts were clearer, his decisions became wiser. Weeks passed, and the king began to transform. The court noticed the difference. The king who once reacted with anger now responded with patience and understanding. His advisors respected him more. His people trusted him more. Not only did the kingdom become more peaceful, but the king himself felt happier and more at ease. One day, he visited his childhood teacher again. With gratitude in his voice, he said, "Your guidance has changed my life. I now understand that true strength is not shown through anger, but through self-control." The teacher smiled and replied, "You have learned an important lesson. But remember, many people struggle with their emotions just as you once did. Share this wisdom with others. Encourage them to practice patience and calmness." He paused for a moment and added another important thought. Emotions such as anger, joy, and sadness are natural parts of life. They come and go like waves. The problem begins when we allow those emotions to control our actions. The king listened carefully, realizing that this lesson was not only for rulers, but for everyone. And in truth, the lesson of this story is meant for all of us. In today's fast and stressful world, we often feel overwhelmed by pressure, frustration, and anxiety. When emotions become intense, it is easy to react without thinking. But if we learn to recognize our emotions and pause before reacting, we can make wiser choices. One helpful step is identifying our emotional triggers, situations, memories, or words that cause strong reactions. When we become aware of these triggers, we can prepare ourselves to respond calmly instead of reacting impulsively. Practices like deep breathing, mindfulness, meditation, or even taking a short break can help calm the mind. Talking to a trusted friend or stepping away from a stressful situation can also help restore balance. Most importantly, we must remember that emotions are temporary. They rise, they fade, and they pass. If we learn to remain patient during those moments, we can avoid many regrets. And when we master our emotions, we gain something far more valuable than power. We gain control over our own lives. That is the true path to a life that is peaceful, balanced, and deeply fulfilling.